Principal sir, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Can we start now, sir?
So please start.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We are here today all set to deliberate on the topic, what all it takes to scale Agile through this virtual mode. This international talk is being organized by Department of Computer Science of our college. With that being said, I offer a warm welcome on behalf of Department of Computer Science to the driving force behind today's program, our respected principal sir, Dr. Ajay Kumar Gargji, honorable members of the college governing body who are always our strength, Dr. Vikram Kumar, convener of this talk, Professor Vinay Bharti, Dr. Ranju, Madam Deepti, Professor Ajmer, and other faculty members of computer science who have been instrumental throughout the process in organizing this talk. I also welcome staff members of the college, students of BCA and BSc Computer Science, and I also welcome our esteemed resource person of the day, Shri Vikram Razdan, who spared his valuable time for us to deliver this all-important talk. I take immense pleasure and honor to introduce our resource person of today's talk, Shri Vikram Razdanji. He is a bona fide academician with a bachelor's and master's degrees in the field of computer science. He is currently working as product manager at Tango Incorporation, which is an expense and telecom management software company located at Nashville, USA. With more than 10 years of experience in different capacities such as production manager, business system analyst, senior business analyst, and manager, product analysis, etc. Prior to this company, Mr. Razdan had spent 5 years working with Symphony Teleca, a software company also located in USA, as project leader and production manager. He had also served in Symphony Services Bangalore as senior engineer for 3 years. Mr. Vikram has vast knowledge of domains like Oracle Business Intelligence Suites, Oracle and SQL Server databases, including SQL Data Transformation Services, Zaira, etc. He is also an expert of SQL development and Tomcat application servers and incorporating the same into automation processes. With this kind of domain knowledge and more than 18 years of experience in the software development world, our students will be highly privileged to hear from you. I once again welcome you. Now, before Vikramji start his talk, I would like to invite our respected principal sir to say a few words about today's program. Over to you, sir. Principal sir.
Thank you, Ashwini. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a matter of great pleasure for me that Department of Computer Science of our college has organized an international talk on a very important topic, what all it takes to scale Agile. I welcome Shri Vikram Razdan, product manager from USA, who has spared time from his busy schedule and agreed to deliver today's talk. This is a topic of interest for most of us, as we all want to know the latest development in the field of the computers. Agile methodology deals with the development of software, its testing, execution at client side. It needs a lot of teamwork at different stages, and definitely this will be very beneficial for our students. These kind of webinars are the need of the hour, especially under the pandemic condition. I'm sure that this talk will be very useful for all of us, especially for our students. I convey my best wishes for the success of the webinar. I congratulate Dr. Vikram Kumar, Head of the Department of Computer Science, Professor Ashwini Gupta, Dr. Ranju, and all faculty members of Computer Department for taking this initiative and organizing this beneficial talk for our BCA, BSc computer students. At IB College, our effort, it is a continuous effort to provide something extra from their routine work to the students so they can be a successful student, successful citizen of India. Friends, the world is facing the most difficult time and are under the impact of COVID-19. During this rare situation, the role of the scientists, doctors, technocrats can't be ignored. I salute to the scientists of the country who put timely efforts in developing two different vaccines, which most of the developed countries couldn't do. By taking all the precautions of COVID-19, we are to continue with our academic activities, no doubt in the online mode. इन बच्चों के लिए कुछ सिखाकर ये दौर भी गुजर जाएगा, कुछ सिखाकर ये दौर भी गुजर जाएगा, फिर से हर इंसान मुस्कुराएगा, निराश न होना दोस्तों, कल आज है और आज कल हो जाएगा। ये मुश्किल समय है, थोड़ा धीरे धीरे पास हो जाएगा, लेकिन बच्चों को अपनी जो स्टडीज हैं वो कंटिन्यू रखनी है। ये हमने ऑनलाइन मोड को एक वीकनेस नहीं बनाना बल्कि अपनी स्ट्रेंथ बनाना है कि ताकि राजदान जैसे व्यक्ति जो यूएसए में बैठकर भी हमारे बच्चों को गाइड करने के लिए तैयार हैं, इस तरह की रेयर अपॉर्चुनिटीज को हमें ग्रैब करना है। At last, I again warmly welcome today's speaker, delegates from the globe, faculty member and students. I hope this webinar will meet out its real objective. And now, without taking much time, I invite today's speaker, Shri Vikram Rajdanji, to deliver his talk. Shri Vikram Rajdanji, please. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Dr. Ajay. Thank you, Dr. Vikram, and thank you, Ashwini, for organizing this and asking me to speak here. So I will just go ahead and try to share my screen here. Ashwini, can you let me know when you can see my screen?
Yeah. It's visible now.
Okay. So, what we are discussing here today is the Agile development methodology. And so the agenda of this, of this talk is, so I will just give you a brief introduction of Agile and why it came into the being. What is the Agile process? What are the building blocks of the Agile process? And then we will try to apply Agile so I've created a scenario in which we can apply this development methodology and see how it works, right? So that at least if that is something practical you can get out of this talk, it will be beneficial to you no matter what you do, in future. If you join a software company, whatever you do, this methodology will help you. And we will try to see in a practical way how that can be accomplished. And then I can just tell you what, in case you want to follow a path in product, especially something in Agile, what to do, right? How can you prepare yourself to achieve that basically and succeed in it? So, basically what is Agile? So the problem we are trying to solve by using Agile is simply how do we get it as right as we can? So there's no perfection in software development, right? Everything is so much in flux, everything is changing so much, but the idea is how do we get it as right as we can, as early as we can, and as efficiently and quickly as we can. It seems a simple term, but in software development, it means everything, right? To get it right as quickly as you can. So how it originated is that in early 2001, a bunch of 17 people got together, and the group members shared a frustration about the current state of affairs, even if they disagreed about how to remedy this situation. So they all agreed about one single problem in the overall development of a software. And the problem they agreed was that the companies were so focused on excessively planning and documenting their software development process. Everybody was creating these big giant Word documents, and development was looking at these big giant Word documents and creating software, that they lost sight of what was really what really mattered, what was really important, and that was our customers. That was pleasing their customers. So to explain it a bit better, I just try to find a couple of diagrams that can illustrate it a bit better. So here is your normal software development cycle as it used to be. So a bunch of people used to come together and define requirements, right? Then they used to pass those requirements on to the development team, and they used to interact a bit during that process, and the development team used to build it. At the end of the cycle, there used to be a big release, and the customer got a value at the end of it, okay? But as you can see, as time passed, the risk increased. Okay. Why? Because from the time the requirement was given to the time it was delivered, it, it, it could be 2 years, 3 years. Even a simple product takes around 2 years to build. So it was a very long time, and with time, risk increased. Okay. And the way to solve that problem was to have shorter releases, basically, and have more interaction with the customer. So basically, what we did was, rather than over a period of 3 years building a software, and I know of softwares that took around 3 to 5 years to build. But at the end of it, when we gave it to the users who were supposed to use it, they said, we don't, either it doesn't do what we want, it is not, it doesn't work well, it's not usable. There was so much feedback at the end, but the feedback used to come at the end of 5 years, right? So, but in this agile scenario, what happens is you do shorter releases. You do releases every 2 months, every 3 months. And what happens is, after you do a release, the first thing you do is you go back to the people who asked you to build that software and get their feedback, basically. So you define, build, and release and send it to the customer. Ask them, what do you think about it? If they say, yeah, we like it, you move on. But if they say, no, we don't like something, you incorporate that in your next release, basically. So it's a more agile approach. You are changing things as you go along, okay? And one good illustration that I found that could differentiate what are the two basic models of software development. One is Waterfall, that was used till now. So in Waterfall used to have departments, right? Requirements department, development, QA, and they worked in their own silos. But in Agile, you have teams, and these teams, more importantly, are cross-functional. So here, the requirements team, all the requirements people were there. Development, all the development people were there, and they worked in their own world, basically. But in Agile, you have cross-functional teams. A team consists of a developer, multiple developers, QA people, architects, technical architects. It also consists of a product person, right? Product owner, who is the person who wrote the requirement. It is called the product owner. And it contains UX specialists sometimes. And it also contains some stakeholders who have a say in what they want. Okay. So all these teams come together, all these people from different teams come together and form teams and build that software in a collaborative way. Okay. So in Waterfall, it used to be a linear approach, but in Agile, as I showed you, it's a cyclical approach, right? This is a linear approach, and this is a cyclical approach. You build it in cycles, basically. Project scope is fixed. There's no project scope. It's all variable. So when you take it back to the customer, he might ask you to change. So you have to change, basically. Okay, you have to change your software based on what he says. Okay, I want changed. Okay, so there's no fixed scope as it used to be previously. Project cost is fixed. Since the scope is variable, your costs are also pretty much variable. Design, everything is upfront. You build these big giant Word documents and you build off of that. But here, it's called just-in-time design. You build it just at the, when it's supposed to be developed. You design it, build it just before that. You don't build it 1 year prior to that. You build it just when you're about to start development of it. Verification, it's after implementation. Verification happens during implementation. Verifications happens in these cycles, basically. Delivery is after verification. Here, the delivery is continuous. You deliver release 1, deliver release 2, release 3. There's no one big giant release at the end of the software development cycle. Okay. So what is an Agile? So these guys who came together, they came up with a manifesto. What should Agile do, right? So what they said was, it should individual and interactions over process and tools. What is more important is individuals and how they interact. Their interaction, they're coming together on calls, in meetings, is more important than some process and some tools that you have to use. Okay. Working software over comprehensive documentation. In Agile, you don't build any documentation. In the sense that the product has a documentation, but during the development cycle, there's no documentation. There's no Word documents that you work off of. And we will see how we work off without documentation in the Agile world. But in the working software or comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So what you want to do is collaborate with the customer in building the software throughout the development process. You don't just do it in the beginning and then give him the product. No, as you are building it, you build something, show it to them, get their feedback. So that's customer collaboration. Responding to change over following a plan, right? So you want, so in the waterfall model, it used to be like this Word document. I remember a time when we used to create these Word documents and give it to development and ask them to change. They said, no, we are not going to change it. It's not in the Word document, it's not in the requirement document. So change came at a premium. It was something like you shouldn't do, as if you had missed something or you had done something wrong. But in Agile, change is welcomed. Okay, change is welcomed. You should be able to accept change and incorporate in your development cycle, basically. So that's basically what Agile Manifesto is. And one of the best images that illustrates what Agile is this. One is this guy thinks he already knows what he wants to build, right? He has got Mona Lisa in his head. So it starts with this top, then he builds the second one, and then he builds this third one, right? This guy says, I want a woman in a pastoral setting, right? He doesn't really know in the end what he wants. He just has a fair idea of what he wants. So he builds a sketch first, right? But as you can see, it's not a breakup. It's a complete sketch, but it's a bare minimum sketch. And then they populate the colors around it, and he just improves it with every iteration, and finally he gets the Mona Lisa, right? So this is Agile, and this is Waterfall, basically, how you build software. That's a good way to illustrate it. So what is an Agile process, right? So here is who I am, right? I'm a product manager, so I worked in product, so there's a product department in our company, right? So the product owner's job is basically to go and talk to all the stakeholders. Stakeholders can be internal or external, right? So internal stakeholders might be people who work in our ordering department or who work in our invoicing department. External stakeholders will be clients who buy our software, basically. And we have lots of them, and we interact with them. And what I do is I ask them, okay, what do you need, right? What do you need? So they say, I want this 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 things I want to build in a software. And what my job is to create, as a product individual, my job is to create what we call as a product backlog. Okay, it's a big list of 50, 100,000 things that I want to do, right? Then there is something called as a sprint cycle in what we call as a Scrum process. A Scrum is a word derived from rugby. In rugby, I don't know if you ever watched, there are these big giant guys who come together around a ball and just lock horns. That's where from the Scrum word came into existence. But what we do after a backlog is we say, okay, we will build it, we will break it up into smaller chunks. We will build it in smaller chunks. And each chunk is a sprint, basically. A sprint can run from 1 to 4 weeks generally. It doesn't go beyond 4 weeks. So we say, okay, out of these, we prioritize, first of all, the backlog. So out of the 50 things that I want to do, I will do 1, 2, 5, 6 first. And I will put that in the sprint. And there's a sprint planning in which the development team gives us an estimate of how much can be done in that particular sprint and how much can be achieved, right? So we break this big backlog into smaller sprints, and that's called the sprint backlog. This is called the release, product backlog, and then there is a sprint backlog. What can we accomplish within these 1 to 4 weeks? So once we discuss with the team, and the team is, as I told you, it's the developers, the QA, the UX, the product, the stakeholders. We say, okay, we're going to do these things in these 4 weeks, and they start developing it. At the end, and during the sprint cycle, there's a Scrum, what we call as a sprint master or a Scrum master. A Scrum master is the one who makes sure that during these 4 weeks, these teams are not disturbed. Nothing else comes into a sprint. Once we decide what is going to be in a sprint, that is going to be completed. There's going to be no addition, changes during a sprint, during these 4 weeks. So this sprint master basically is the orchestrator of this symphony, basically. He makes sure everything is working well, the teams are interacting well, so on and so forth. And during these 4 weeks, there is a daily stand-up that happens between teams in which everybody says what they are going to do that day. Okay, and it happens. You might think it's an overburden, but in every company that uses Agile, which is almost every company now, they have these daily stand-up meetings in which all the team members who are working on the software basically say what they are going to do. Once they are done with this 4-week sprint or 2-week sprint, we use a 2-week sprint, some use 4 weeks, as I said. There's a sprint review. Everybody who had a stake in it comes together and tries to see, okay, what we did in this 4 week, is it what we want? And there's a sprint review that happens. And at the end of it, they usually do a release. Sometimes releases span multiple sprints. So we usually do, two sprints or 3 sprints and then do a release, And then there's a sprint retrospective at the end. So whenever a sprint finishes, all the team comes together and they says, okay, what did we do well? What did we do wrong? What do we not need to do? What do we need to do more of, right? There is a sprint retrospective meeting. So all these meetings are part of the Agile process, and they happen in every organization that uses Agile. Okay, so that's the overall Scrum process basically that we use. And a good illustration is this one. So this is the backlog that we talked about, right? Here's the product backlog. So I said I'm going to do task 1 and 2 in sprint 1, task 3 and 4 in sprint 2, 5 and 6 in 3, and task 7 and 4. So now I built task 1 and 2, and let's say we did a small release. And I went to the customer back, and he said, no, in this task 2, I don't like this. And I went to all the stakeholders, that can be your customers, your internet stakeholders, and I show them this work, okay? And they say, I don't like this in task 1 that you did. I don't like this in task 2 that you did. And they say, I want this change 1, change 2, and change 3, okay? So what happens is, apart from task 3 and 4, I'm going to slot this change 1. I will see what the priority is. So we work to prioritize these tasks in the backlog. And we say, okay, this change 1 is important, right? So it goes into sprint 2. And in task 5, there was task 6, right? But this change 2 and 3 is more important. So it goes into sprint 3. And task 6 goes out of it. And it goes to the next sprint, right? Because there is no fixed thing that you have to do it in this sprint, right? Everything is changes. As I said, we encourage change in the development process. So that's how we are able to accept changes on the fly. With every sprint, we go back, get the feedback, and incorporate those changes, okay? So applying Agile. So I thought, one good way of showing how Agile is used to just take a practical example and just run through it with you guys. So here's an ordering smartphones process. Okay, so the typical process is what? The customer places an order, payment successful, warehouse receives order, item picked, packed, shipped, order delivered. Is the customer happy? Major success and efficiency. So this is a simple ordering process. So how do I go about as a product person working with the people who do this to build a backlog? Okay. So the way we create a backlog is in a structure that consists of themes, epics, user stories, and tasks. This is the most important thing as a product person. If you want to go into products, that you need to understand is this slide. So theme is a higher level conceptualization of the problem. Epic is a smaller breakdown of that problem. User stories are really granular, okay? Very small chunks of problems that you're solving. And tasks are basically done by development team in order to fulfill these user stories. Usually the product person's job ends, at least in our case, it ends with the writing of the user story. That's my job, product team's job, to write these themes, these epics, these user stories, okay? And user stories are usually written in a way that is non-technical, okay? You don't say, create this database table, create this UX, or create that, no. What you say is, as a type of user, these user stories are the most important. They are just kind of, organizing these user stories. They are ways of organizing these user stories. But user stories are the most important thing in the Agile process. And they are written always in such a way. Okay, if you find any company that is following Agile and not writing, that's not the correct way to do it. So you say, as a type of user, I want to do something so that, there is some reason for you to do that. Okay. As a user, I can back up my hard drive. As a power user, I can have my reports on my dashboard. So that's how stories are written. They are written from an end user's perspective. They are not technical in nature. They are my understanding of their problem, and I clearly articulate who I am solving the problem for, what the problem is, and why am I solving it, so that I get the whole context of the problem. Okay, so that's how we organize it. So that's all this stuff, these user stories go into your product backlog after I talk to these stakeholders. So let's take our example, right? Typical order process. So what would be a theme? Order placement. Customer places order. Order placement will be a theme. What could be an epic? A smaller categorization of this problem. Order cell phones. Order cell phone accessories might be two smaller ways of categorizing this problem. What could be a user story? So for order cell phones, it could be ability to search cell phones, ability to view cell phone details, ability to add cell phone to a cart. As you can see, the problem gets smaller till it reaches a story. And a story is really granular. It's very small. It should be testable. It can be developed in independence. It should be tested in independence. That's the mark of a good story, basically. But once you are done with the story, so this is an example of our order placement where you place order. What could be one more example of this? Order payment. Now he has to do payment, right? So payment is a bigger problem, which is a theme. Pay using credit card is an epic. Pay using direct bank transfer is an epic. Ability to enter cost center information, for pay using credit card is a story. Ability to authenticate this credit card information is a story. Ability to process payment is a story, right? It's a smaller categorization of that problem. Okay. Now, once I've written all these stories, what do? I go and throw them basically on a wall. In our case, we use a software, which is the most popular software in Agile, which is called Jira. Okay. We use a software and just organize all these stories. So there's a big line of these stories that you will see in a backlog. So just to represent that backlog, I have put them over here. So we all look at, okay, these are the things we want to do, and we will do it for, all the things. We will take all of these and kind of break them into these smaller chunks, basically. Okay. Then we will take stories and put them on a wall. And basically, the next job is for me as a product person. I'm still here. Okay. Next job as a product person for me is to organize them based on criticality. What is most important for me from a product perspective? Okay. So obviously, until I do ability to search phones, there's no point in ability to view cell phones, right? I have to search them and then I can view them. So ability to search phone becomes a critical, story. Ability to enter cost center information for payment becomes a critical, story. Ability to view becomes high. Why this is important, this high, medium is high, because the development team takes these stories based on criticality. So they will try to do critical and highs first and try to kind of push medium and low level stories down the road. Okay. So it's very important when we are building the backlog that what we want to do first is marked as critical and high, and that's how it reaches the development's backlog. So what do I do after I've created these stories? I have marked them, I prioritize them. Now my job is to work with the development team. So here is where the beauty of Agile comes through. Here I am taking this backlog now, and I am trying to solve, groom this story with the whole team. So who is in this, overall scrum? So there's this business user, there's these end users, there's the domain expert. Here is the product owner, who is the main person who has written these stories, knows what they are, and things like that. Then there is a scrum master who is basically organizing all these people and making sure. So this happens prior to sprint planning. So this grooming happens usually prior to sprint planning. So who else is there in this huddle? So there's a development person, there's a QA person, there's a business analyst, there's an architect. Business analysts usually are also from the product team, but they are part of these smaller teams. So this could be a Scrum team that is working on a given functionality, but it is self-contained, as you can see. It is a dev, QA, architect, business analyst, and this product owner usually will communicate with this business analyst over here. So in this, what we do is explain the story to them. As you can see, there's no big documentation. There's this small story that they have to do, right? It's usually, I don't know, 20, 30 lines. It has got a, what do we want to do? It has got an acceptance criteria, or what we call as a done criteria. So it has got all those things that are needed by development, QA, and other people to, to start developing the solution. UX people will come up with a UX design to that particular to the problem. If it requires a user interface, the UX people will come with the UX input. But as you can see, it is happening just before development, and it happens week after week, sprint after sprint, sprint after sprint. It's a very collaborative effort. Okay. Now, how do we plan it? So I say we decided, okay, in sprint 1, we are going to do ability to search cell phones, ability to view cell phone details. Okay. In sprint 2, I'm going to do ability to enter cost center information and ability to authenticate. In sprint 3, I'm going to do ability to add cell phones to a cart and ability to process payments. That's how I will do my first 3 sprints, basically. And you usually create enough stories for, for usually 2 sprints, 3 sprints. So you can keep working on your backlog and prioritizing it, and then before a sprint begins, you can choose what you want to do in that particular sprint. So let's say this is the choice we have made, and we have said that after the first 2 sprints, we are going to do a release. Okay, and after the 3rd sprint also, we are going to do a release. Okay? Why this release is important is because feedback. We want feedback as early as possible, as quickly as possible, so that if we are going in the wrong direction, we stop and correct ourselves. That's the whole idea. So let's say we planned this and people started working. They worked on sprint 1, they worked on sprint 2, and after that we did a release. Okay, so after a release happens, it's actually a deployable release, basically. We deploy it on an instance where people can access it, play with it. And from a product perspective, what we do is we do usability, what we call as usability sessions. Okay, we sit with the client, we sit with other stakeholders, and we tell them, okay, go ahead and search a cell phone. And this is it's one of the best things in Agile, these usability sessions, because they give you really good critical feedback. So what we tell them is, okay, we have built this ability to search cell phones. Here's the software. Imagine waiting 3 years for a software and having a software after 2 weeks or 4 weeks. It makes a big difference because you can get feedback really quickly. It is not everything that you want, right? But it is enough for you to get feedback. So what we say is, okay, go ahead and search cell phones. So people will go into the application, they will put in a vendor name, they might put in a data plan that they want, how many minutes they want, how many SMSs they want on it, all that stuff they can put in. I know you guys have unlimited data now in India, but here it's still, you choose a data plan like 2 GB, 4 GB, whatever your data plan is. And the more data you want, the more expensive your plan is. But you make these choices. But how you make these choices, how easy it is. So there is this UX person on these calls, on these usability sessions, who is also a user experience expert. So he doesn't do anything. He just sits there and listens, or rather sees how this client is using this ability to search cell phones. Okay, so a client will go. We tell them in the beginning itself, we won't tell you anything. Okay, so you told us that you want this ability to search phones, so go ahead and do the search cell phones now. We don't tell them click here, click there. So pointing or guiding them is very much prohibited unless they get really stuck, in which case we try to help them. But the idea is the software intuitive enough? Is it usable enough? Is it good enough for them to understand it on their own? Okay, so they will go, and maybe there's a bar at the top of the web page that says, enter what kind of smartphone that you want, and so you type in, I want a Nokia, whatever, or I want a Apple, this thing, I want a Samsung phone, and it gives you a bunch of choices, and then how you interact with it, how you click on something, what kind of information you leave, and we ask them to speak out loud. So that's one more thing that we tell our customers, our clients, or our users, who are internal, external. We tell them to think out loud. When you are moving your mouse, speak out loud what you are trying to search, so that we hear what you're thinking, what you're trying to search. A good example I will give you is, recently we had worked on the software, and we had worked almost for almost 6 months to build what we call as MVP release. It's called as MVP release, which means minimum viable product. So when you define your sprints, you first usually define your minimum viable sprint. That means what is the basic minimum software that is usable to a client. Now you will have a different types of clients. You will have complex, simple. You build a software first for the simplest of clients, okay? And you say, this is my minimum viable release, basically. A software that is good enough to be used by some clients, not all clients. That's how we define it. So in this minimum viable release, basically, we define certain metrics, we define certain goals that we want to accomplish in the agile process, but during this overall process, so minimum viable release usually happens like 3-4 releases after the first release. So it's not the first release that is the minimum viable release. You do a certain shorter releases to reach the minimum viable release. So the point I was trying to make is, so we built a software for 6 months, and it was a pretty simple thing wherein the user said, okay, I will click on this to place my order, okay? Now, when after 6 months we went to them and we showed them and we did a usability session with them, we realized he was getting lost. He didn't know which page he was on and where he needed to be. And we do not this usability session with now one person, we do it with 20, 30 different people. So we went to 20, 30 different people, and out of those 20, 30 different people, almost like 90% said, we are getting lost, basically. We don't know why we are in this, in the overall flow. And that made us realize that we need to change something, right? So we redesigned it, and we gave them a new look. So we prioritized that. So we shifted everything that we had planned a bit down, and we prioritized this navigation issue that we were facing, that almost everybody was facing. We prioritized it up and made a quick release based on those new changes that we asked, and went back to them, okay? Now, what do you think of this? They were like, we love it, But that could not have been possible without a software release, a small software release, and being able to talk to them, basically. It would not have been possible, okay? So in our example, I built this. I went to the customer or any other stakeholders, usually 20, 30 stakeholders, and we showed it to them. We hate the way we search the model. It's not user friendly. They said there's something very bad about, we don't like it. We are getting lost, or it's not easy to search. It's not easy to find phones. The data plans are not showing up correctly. This is not correct, or that is not correct. So what we do is we say, okay, all this that we were planning to do for this third sprint goes out, kick it out, because this is less important. What is more, do I think this is more important for our customer than this? Obviously, yes. Until you are able to properly search a phone, there's no point in going down the road and building something else. The first thing in the product that is built for you to buy a phone is to search a phone properly. If that does not work well, it doesn't matter what you do afterwards. So you have to fix that first. So what we do is we kick everything out and we put this story in. We write a story for it. We work with the UX, enhance it, give it to development in that Scrum meeting, basically, and tell them, build it now. This is what you are going to do for the next sprint. So we are encouraging change. We are encouraging change from the users. In the olden days, if something like this had happened, development would have said, we are never going to do this. This is you are changing what you had told us how you are going to do it. We won't do it. Basically, this is too much work. Or they used to come up with a million different reasons why they did not want to do the changes. Basically, but here it's encouraged, it's welcomed. Change is good. Okay. Uh, as I said, at the end of this sprint, there's a sprint retrospective that happens. So what do we do in a sprint retrospective? So we say what worked well, what could be improved, what will we commit to doing in the next sprint. That's also a part of the retrospective sometimes. Scrum team members make actionable commitments. So everybody in the team says, be it developer, be it QA, be it product, be it UX, right? Everybody says, okay, I am going to do this, or this is how we can improve it. I think this is not working well. It's a very vocal conversation, and it happens at the end of every sprint. Any agile organization, any organization, which is again, all organizations now use agile, you will have that scrum meeting at the end of it. And they usually happens like this. Somebody goes onto the whiteboard and draws these lines and says, what do we do less of? Let's have less visitors, that they're taking a lot of our time. What should we stop doing? Daily unfreezing. What should we keep doing? One per month lunch meeting. We really love that one per month. It helps us to bond together. It helps us to share ideas. We like that. So let's keep doing that. What should we start doing? Maintain impediment backlog. Something that is preventing us from, that will prevent us from doing something else. So what do we more of? Celebrate success, technical discussion sessions. So here in the sprint retrospective, you basically get together and say, what do we want to do more of? What do we want to do less of? What should we stop? Things like that. And it's a very good meeting. And all this, as you can see, this and this, it encourages working together. There's no documentation, nothing. There's this small story around which everybody comes together basically and starts working. So that is it. So this is just generally the overall, although we know I don't have too much time here, but this should give you a good idea of, if you choose to go into software development or if you choose to go into products, right? This should give you a good, I think, building block about how you want to approach a problem, how you want to use agile as part of your daily process. Okay. Now, one thing that I thought of I might share with you, because you guys will soon be jumping into the corporate world, what would benefit you, right? So as I said, I am in products and I am the bridge between the stakeholders, which is clients or internal stakeholders, and the developers and QA and everybody else. So I am that bridge in between. So I'm from the product. So if you want to go into products, there's something called as a certified Scrum product owner. So when you first go into product, you usually go in as a business analyst or what we call as a product owner. Okay. So there are certifications. Some of them are free. There's humongous amount of information available online for you guys to learn online or through YouTube, whatever you have. But if you want to do this certified Scrum product owner, that's a good place to start. It will give you a good weightage when you go into an organization and say, I want a job. If you are a certified Scrum product owner, it will look good on your resume. Then there is this advanced Scrum product owner. Then there is a certified Scrum Master. As I told you, the guy who is the orchestrator of everything. So there's a certification for that, and there's an advanced certified Scrum certification. So you should definitely, if you are interested in product development, you should look into these certifications. Even if you don't do the certifications, look at the contents of these certifications and try to learn from that. Jira Product Administrator. As I said, Jira is the most popular software used in Agile, and it's pretty easy to use. But a good certification or a training on this software will definitely take you a long way in the Agile world, basically. So with that said, I will be happy to take any questions that you guys might have, Ashwani, from anybody.
I think Kashish from BCA1 has something to talk to. Kashish, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Please go ahead.
It's not a question, but actually, I would like to base my reviews on this webinar. It's been real nice. Well, first of all, I'll thank you for so much for sharing this knowledge and your time with us. From not knowing to what agile is, to getting to know what the process is, otherwise how it came, why it came. It's been a very knowledgeable webinar, and I think quite of us learned quite a lot today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your feedback.
Thank you,
Thank
Kashish.
you so much.
Any student having a questions? So that's all for now. I will thank Shri Vikram Rajdanji for sparing his valuable time and deliver such an important talk to our students. I hope कि हमारे स्टूडेंट्स को इससे काफ़ी कुछ सीखने को मिलेगा और वो आगे जैसा कि विक्रम जी ने बताया जायरा और स्क्रम डेवलपर एजाइल प्रोसेस के बारे में अपने कंटेंट सर्च करके इस फील्ड में जा सकते हैं. So I again welcome all the faculty members of Department of Computer Science, Dr. Vikram Kumar, Shri Vikram Rajdanji, and above all, our principal sir, Dr. Ajay Kumar Garg ji, जिन्होंने हमें ये मौका दिया कि हम ये टॉक को ऑर्गेनाइज करवा सकें. So I thank you all. Thank you, Vikram ji. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Best of luck to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Aswani, sir.
हाँ जी बोलिए आप.
Sir, I have a question actually for Vikram, sir. Actually, as most of the students are from BCA background or BSc background, and it is always a trending question that which language they should learn if they want to go for the software development, like PHP, and we do have many languages like PHP, Java, or so what language they should consider first so that they can begin their journey.
I will post your question to Vikram ji because he has a meeting at 10 o'clock. So he has just left the talk. He has an important meeting coming up.
Okay.
So I request all the participants to leave the meeting, and I will send feedback form. This feedback form is for students only in the respective WhatsApp group through their teachers so that they can fill the feedback form. Okay, thank you all. Thank you so much.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
नहीं यार.